Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of our Reimagine Mobility podcast series. I'm here with Nir Hasson from Karamba Cybersecurity. Thank you, Nir, for joining us. And maybe for some of our listeners and viewers that don't know what Karamba does, maybe give us a 2-minute high-level elevator speech of what you guys are doing in the cybersecurity space.
Sounds good. So thank you, Stefan and Jeremiah, for hosting me. So Karamba Security, we've been around since 2016. From the company inception, our goal was to provide cybersecurity solutions for vehicles and mobility in general. So when we started, so today, let's say seven years forward, we have a very comprehensive product and services portfolio that covers the development side of when you design a component, a vehicle, etc. From basic things like training, threat modeling, pen testing, and up to post-production when you want to add self-protection to your vehicle for the critical components, as well as monitoring the operation of the vehicle in terms of cybersecurity. And today we are serving nice amount of OEMs globally in the US, Europe, and in Asia. And we just had a press release earlier this week about protecting 1 million trucks in Europe. A large OEM there. We are based in Israel, but we have offices in the US, in Detroit, in San Francisco Bay Area, also in Europe, and working with partners in Asia.
Very good. So yeah, I want to bring this up, the announcement you guys made. That's with your Guard X product.
XGuard,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, or XGuard, sorry. Tell us a little bit, what does this thing do for those that are in cybersecurity for many years, but also for those who don't. Tell us a little bit, what specifically does this product of yours help the OEM with, and what does it actually do?
Yeah, so when you think about it, taking a step back here and say that, let's say you want to protect a device connected. So a device that is connected by default is risk level goes up. And now the question is, what are you going to do about it? In many companies, many device companies, connected device companies, a device can be a vehicle, it can be a medical device, etc. They're very good in what they're doing. So they're trying to solve some specific problem or create some value by creating a product that with the relevant functionality and capabilities, and that's their core expertise. And then comes cybersecurity. Now the landscape is changing. Now you need to consider cybersecurity, and most of them don't really have a strong cybersecurity capabilities in-house, and obviously tools as well. So our goal is to provide simple solutions that you can add into your devices, which can be a vehicle, in order to make them more cybersecurity resilient. Specifically, XGuard is, you can think about it like, you can simplify it and say, like, we all have antivirus on our laptops. It will be nice to have a similar thing, similar self-protection on the critical components in the vehicle. In this specific example, there are connected modules inside the truck that these clients of ours identified as being constantly attacked. Not exactly directly, but just for the fact that it runs a common OS, and there are some bad stuff running in the over the internet and reaching these trucks, and can create even into a position, into a case, of someone being able to steal the vehicle. So what we had there with XGuard is essentially, as I mentioned, kind of a next-gen antivirus and EDR for for embedded devices. It provides self-protection. So even if you have vulnerability, known vulnerability on your device, XGuard will render them as useless because it will be able to detect the manipulation that the attacker is trying to do and block it from the get-go.
Oh, interesting. And I guess staying for that for a moment before we go a little bit more generic, do I assume correctly that your XGuard can regularly be updated if new threats and new vulnerability are detected, or the bad guys, so to speak, find a way around it? You can update your XGuard over the air to make it even more robust? Is that a fair assessment, or is that handled differently?
That's a great question. So actually, we took a different approach here. So when you think about antivirus, essentially you think about, okay, I need to update the signatures of that identifies bad software, etc. XGuard, the way it works, it essentially locks down the design, the functionality. So when you, for example, let's say you have an infotainment system, okay, it does what it does. During the build time, when the code is ready, the functionality is well defined. And that's where XGuard is part of the build process. So it automatically analyzes this functionality, and it adds cybersecurity checks just to make sure that the functionality, the flow of the software is going to be kept during runtime. Any deviation from that will be blocked. So one example can be, simple example is if someone, so you have your image of your infotainment system, the hacker was able to drop some malicious file into it. Now he wants to execute it. And we will identify that this thing is foreign. It was not part of the original code or any update that came after, and we will block it and will not allow it to run. So we can think about if someone's trying to inject a ransomware into infotainment system and essentially turn your head unit into a brick, unless you pay them, and this thing will not be permitted.
So let's say though, that OEM, and again, truck OEM, may be less likely than in passenger, but nevertheless, from a conceptual point of view, decides, hey, the users, they want new features on the infotainment system, the example that you just used, and we're going to send an over-the-air update. How is your system then aware of the new functionality of the new software, so to speak, that's now flashed into the head unit? Is it agnostic of that, or is it part of that update as well, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's agnostic. The short answer, it's agnostic. Essentially, what happens is that, think about when software, so it's not only agnostic, it's also transparent to the engineering. So the engineers will develop whatever they want. They will, keep advancing the features and more capabilities. The code will get into, is going to be built in the tool chain. You can think about XGuard as as another second compiler that sits after that, analyze the code, understand the functionality or the flow of the program and what kind of components are there, and lock down these capabilities, and and then you have a release of the software with these cybersecurity checks enabled. Now, let's say you have OTA, you want to send an update, you're essentially building a new package. This package also will go through this process, and we have a mechanism that identifies that there is a new package and that it needs to update the policy and what is allowed to run on the ECU, for example. Okay, let's say you added another functionality to do A. So this software, in our ECU, our XGuard agent, we understand that there is a new functionality called A with its own libraries, and we'll allow it to run and operate.
Okay. So maybe go for a second, go a little more generic. Where do you guys see the majority of cybersecurity activities going on? So it relates to which market do you see the biggest demand for your solutions, right? To protect vehicles, let's call it passenger and heavy duty trucks, anything in between there. Is it in Asia? Is it in Europe? Is it in the US? what are some of the trends? Where do you see it mainly?
So, the big blessing, recent blessing of that we had was the introduction of the ISO 21434, which essentially it's a well-written standard, I would say, very explained very vividly what needs to happen, and also kind of create a standardization, kind of a global standardization that every market is following. Um, so I would say that um, what we see is more like, so we see demand across the board, I would say.
Okay.
But there is different types of demands. So you have all these emerging EV players, like the followers of Tesla,
Uh-huh.
and they have a very aggressive timeline to produce cars, and at the same time, again, they don't have cybersecurity capabilities, at least not in the scale that they need. And so over there, we see a lot of requirements, a lot of demand, and it can be, the spectrum can be from helping them with the certification process up to um, helping them, in terms of providing them something like a CISO as a service, someone that will go inside the company, will help them to define their vehicle cybersecurity strategy and take it from there, and all the features and the tools and so on and so forth. And we have
Uh-huh.
engagements in that level as well. So definitely the emerging EV. We also see in traditional OEMs and Tier-1s, you also see they always have a demand. They always need help in terms of services, and pen testing is a big thing. Um, it became a main thing. It's something that every company needs to do before they release their products, their ECUs and vehicles, and so we see a lot of traction over there. Um, and yeah, so I would say the emerging EVs definitely provides a lot of work, a lot of traction, but also the traditional one, because of their scale and their and maturity in terms of alignment with the ISO.
Sure. So you mentioned the ISO standard, which I agree, and it at least puts a common base that everybody can work off, and that we understand how to communicate between customers, OEMs, and suppliers like you, and ourselves as well, obviously.
Yeah.
How much more important, however, to really get the push for cybersecurity to truly be implemented in a maybe much more diligent, much more serious level, if you can use that word, is when governments get involved. So let's say the EU has enacted, right, cybersecurity mandates and regulations
Mm-hmm.
that, for example, we don't necessarily have in the US. How much more demand did you guys see for your solution based on that change, as opposed to, again, ISO regulation that certainly also are used in the US, but where a actual government regulation and certification, so to speak, is missing or still missing, may still come. How is this changing the dynamics of demand for you?
Yeah, so in Europe, the European market or the European regulations are always kind of setting leading the way in terms of regulation of
Mhm.
cybersecurity. You have GDPR, etc. Everything came up out of Europe, but you see the same thing here, where the case of in Europe, they decide they're bringing a new regulation, and all the companies globally are aligning into that because they don't want to maintain two different systems, especially when. So in the beginning, when ISO started to gain traction, we thought, okay, maybe it will be more, or the UNECR 155, maybe it will be more applicable for our European customers.
Uh-huh.
But what we saw in reality is that everyone is aligning to that, because even if you're an OEM in the US, you're telling yourself, okay, I want to sell in Europe, I want to sell in Japan, and so I'm not going to create two different platforms. So I just better do everything at once at the same on the same platform.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so it's very rare to see someone that for some reason skip the ISO. I don't think we saw such an example. In the beginning, we felt like maybe some of our clients will not adhere into ISO, but eventually all of them are. And also, I think that what I heard from a large OEM is that if you're adhering to, even if you're the US and you're selling only, let's say you're selling your cars in the US, it's easier to defend yourself against when you're interacting with NHTSA, when you show them that you follow
Sure.
the standard.
Yeah.
You say, yeah, I did everything I can, I follow this standard, and it just happened.
Yeah, it's
So
very
it's
similar, very similar to the approach that essentially US OEMs are using with ISO 26262, so functional safety, right? It's not necessarily a mandate, but everybody wants to use it because you can then highlight that you used the proper design practices, that you did your hazard and risk analysis when you design a component, a subsystem, system, et cetera. It sounds like it's very similar in the cybersecurity space as well.
Yeah, and I want to also add that there is, beside the compliance, you also want to hedge your risks. If you're following the ISO, which mandates best practices in terms of processes and so on for cybersecurity, you're also producing a higher quality product that is more resilient out there. And I agree, it's not number one priority, especially for companies that are rushing to release a car. But it's something that they think about, and they definitely want to protect themselves and make sure that they are also providing a quality product at the end, because that's one of their goals.
So I've known of your company and worked with some of your co-workers for many years, and it felt like at the beginning when you guys started, you said 7 years ago, right? Very exciting time. Everybody talked about cybersecurity, but then at least from my perspective, it felt like it didn't get the lift off, right? We were on the tarmac, we were ready to take off, but it didn't really take off. We were kind of like waiting. And now it seems to have taken off. Why now? Or am I seeing it wrong? Or if I see it right, why now? What do you believe has changed? Is it a regulation? Is it an acknowledgement that no, this is really serious and some really bad things could happen, both from a safety, but also from a, let's say, from the amount of ransom, from an economic impact an OEM has? Share a little bit of light from your perspective on that.
Yeah, so Stefan, you definitely see it correctly. I think there are maybe kind of 3 dimensions here for why things change. First of all, on the I would say market level, there is more maturity following the ISO and the UNEC R155. Today or since Q4 last year, you can't sell a new vehicle model in Europe unless it passes cybersecurity certification, which puts cybersecurity in the same front row with safety, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. It's only in the until today. It's only in the automotive industry. Yeah, other markets are starting to catch up, but it's very unique. So one thing is the maturity on that level, and yeah, many OEMs and Tier-1s kind of now they're doing some firefighting because they heard about it, but maybe they didn't take it too seriously or didn't have the right budgets. Now they're trying to rush and close the gaps. That's one thing. The second thing is, I think to be frank, on the company level, we started with XGuard, which is a great solution, but it was, I would say, a little bit ahead of its time.
Ahead of its time, yeah.
Yeah, because when you look at the evolution of cybersecurity in automotive, for example, you need to start from the basic stuff of the software, for the secure software development lifecycle. So you need to do threat modeling, you need to do pen testing, and so on. So a big gap over there that needs to be closed before you can think about, okay, I'm very good over there, but now I want to go to the next level. And so that was something. So we were a little bit there. That's why we decided to, at some point, we understood that we actually need to help our clients. We need to help the market in closing that gap they have, the skill gap or knowledge gap. And we started to develop our cybersecurity consulting arm, which is very successful, very busy. And we start to open different labs in different locations, like the one we have in Michigan, and that helps as researchers and help our clients to pen test and so on. And so we did that services, and we also developed tools that automates some of the work that needs to do, the heavy lifting work that needs to happen in order to comply with the ISO, and also to simplify what you're doing, and essentially also address the issue here where you have high demand for cybersecurity talent, but not enough people out there. And so you want to use tool to do more with less, and that's where we also focusing with our vCode platform. Okay, so we have an automatic tower. We can create a tower within minutes, which is kind of crazy. Instead of weeks, you have the binary analysis, which allows you to quickly understand your device, your system, your vehicle, cybersecurity posture, and also help you with pen testing, and also down the road on managing your vulnerabilities once the vehicle, the ECU is in the field. So that will be, kind of the second dimension. The last dimension is what happens, in the market, in reality. So last week there was an article on the Guardian mentioning that, talking about a class action lawsuit against Kia and Hyundai. I don't know if you heard about it, but essentially what happened over there is that there was in early 2021, there was a TikTok challenge of explaining how to break into Hyundai and Kia cars using a USB cable. And this thing kind of started to gain momentum. And a year later, the Los Angeles officials reported there is a spike in car theft of these specific models. And we're talking about 9 million vehicles globally. And so the end result of that was that Kia and Hyundai paying $200 million to deal with all the aftermath of this failure. So yeah, $200 million, it's not a small amount. And you have it in different places that, these things are happening. There are things that are not public but that we are aware of. So all these things are converging, and eventually that's why we are here today, and probably it's going to continue like that in the foreseen future.
So perfect lead into my next question. So Nir, we talked a little bit now, again, what have you guys over the last 7 years done at Karamba? Where's the industry come from with regulation, technologies? Again, some stuff early, ahead of its time, you had to change it around. Now the demand is here. What do you see in the next 5 years when you look at cybersecurity, and specifically what you guys are doing, right? Is it again, you mentioned you can do a Terra in threat and risk assessment in minutes, where before it maybe was days or weeks or months. Is it automation of pen testing that's gonna really make the next leap in technology going forward? Is it that all the many functions are going to be in the cloud, and you become more or less protecting the cloud versus the vehicle? What is it? Just some ideas I threw out here. What do you see happening in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so we start to see, so if you think about, let's talk about numbers here. Okay, so we have, connected vehicles, the CVIO, the connected vehicles in operation is now, so 85% of the vehicles now being sold are connected. The number is, and the number is going to go to 400 million in 2025 and 600 million in 2028. And at the same time, you have the autonomous vehicles, okay, or semi-autonomous. And so doing a full autonomous vehicle is hard. Obviously, it's still hard. But if you look at level 3 and above, which provides you, the ability to have some, the vehicle can drive by itself or under some conditions, most conditions, or all conditions. These things, the number we are seeing, I believe it's 8 million in 2 years from now. 8 million vehicles will be on the road with some types of level 3 and above capabilities. So what we see over there is that we are being approached by our clients about, okay, and we need to talk about how we improve the autonomous, or are we going to secure the autonomous capabilities, okay? Um, and we see some projects around that. And over there you have many challenges like sensor fusion, where the sensors of the vehicle can include microwave, video, and so on, are being fused together in order to create some kind of perception. But there are many ways that you can fool these devices. There is this example of one of our researchers that we're working with just projected an Elon Musk image on the road, and the Tesla car just saw it and just stopped, although it was on the road, etc. So there are many examples like that. So how do you tackle that? Because this can also create, some kind of operational issues. So that's one front, and I think that's where we are now learning it, and we are starting to think about how to provide solution to that. The cloud side of the vehicle, definitely. Big, there is a sizable amount of our business is there, and we're being invited to go and explore and help and advise on how to better to make sure that their cloud is resilient. We also have collaborations with companies that are developing VSOCs, because our XGuard solution can provide. So when you try to monitor a fleet, it's essentially today you're monitoring it from looking around the vehicle, so looking at the communication, etc. But the best way to, and this thing creates a lot of noise and false positives, but the best way to really understand what happens in the vehicle is to run something on the critical ECUs. And that's where XGuard comes into play, because it also has this capability that we released 2 years ago. So I would say, autonomous is a big driver, and the fact that there are many, many more connected vehicles, and we start to see more and more players joining the game. The sensors that are related to autonomous in general, how to protect that functionality, and also the cloud side, how we can help harden the vehicle cloud.
So maybe the final question, then I'm going to put you on the spot here, maybe for a moment. If you had to, with all the customers that you interact with, which is mainly US customers, if you take a global approach and look at all your customers, OEM and suppliers in the mobility space, what is the one thing that maybe always surprises you again, that these companies and the people responsible there for protecting a vehicle, right, cybersecurity, don't understand or don't seem to rate as high from a threat point or from a possibility as you guys at Karamba believe? Is there one thing that sort of sticks out that you always say again, man, I wish they would finally put more weight or more emphasis or more importance on this?
Yeah, so there are two things I think that can help the industry. One is to create more awareness and training inside organizations. So, you always, I guess, same thing for AVL. You have clients that you say, wow, they're, kind of amazing company. They're doing the right things. They're operating in the right way. And you have the companies that, not doing it very well on the cybersecurity side. And even to the point where we have cybersecurity researchers that are working on some projects with OEMs, and they say, wow, this car is amazing, but I probably will never buy it unless they're going to fix all the things that we found here, because it's scary. So definitely you need to create training and awareness, because you see also in upper management that they're not fully understand the magnitude of cybersecurity. There are so many examples outside of the IT cybersecurity that you can see that lack of understanding created a very big issues down the road. So you can still hear something like, what you're trying to protect never happened, which is okay. It's like
that's like an insurance company, right? You pay for something and hope that it never happens, but if it happens, you're protected. So
exactly. So that's one thing. The second thing is we still see even if with companies that, working with premium OEMs, premium brands, etc., that's supposed to have very good cybersecurity, you see that these tier ones still have lack of cybersecurity quality, let's say in the Tara and pen testing, etc. And we come in and we help them to clean up what happened there. And I think that one thing they need to do is definitely use more automation, more tools. It's still the usage of tools and the reliance on manual work is still prevalent, which is something that definitely needs to be fixed. So I would say, more training, more education, increasing the awareness, because not everyone understands in the organization what exactly happens. And the second thing is to rely more on automation and tools. There are very, very great tools out there, and you definitely can save time and money when you do that.
Yeah, good points. So I'll make sure before I buy my next car, I'll check with you and the experts at Karamba to make sure that whatever car I'm choosing is also safe to drive. So that's good. Nir, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your great insight. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for listening to Reimagine Mobility Podcast. If you like this episode, please subscribe and tell a friend.